Anchors up, sails at full. Welcome to the SloopCast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing pretty well, Jared. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. It's a new tradition. It's a good tradition. I may have spilled some.
I was going to say that there was a little more that came out of that one this time.
Listen, whenever I do it like energetically, because I'm trying to get the pop for the podcast, we always get a little bit extra.
Speaking of a little extra.
All right. I'm gonna judge your transition.
All right. Not as good as previous ones, but
speaking of extra,
more camp news, extra camp news today here. How about that?
3.5.
Yeah.
3.5.
I'll do better.
And that's out of 10. That's out of 10, just so we're clear.
So this week 2, 1.5, and in the books right now for Ohio State with camp here, and yeah, lots of information related to position battles, to interviews with the coaches, to some sickness with the team here, and a little behind the curtains about the Saturday scrimmage here.
Everything's fine. Keep talking. I didn't do anything wrong.
All right.
Nothing bad just happened. I promise.
All right. I trust you, Jared. All right. So let's go ahead and start with, let's talk about the coaches here and what they had to say about their positions here. First off here, let's talk about the O-line. The O-line here. Earlier in the week here, some of you may have seen things going around here that, yes, the O-line most of them did catch some sort of virus. I believe that Coach Day called it a funky virus. So you may hear like funky virus being thrown around here for the next few weeks.
Hold on. Where's Gangland when we need him? Well, I need a definition. Oh, look at that. Esquire's already on it, tagging Gangland, Chief Medical Officer here to assess the long-term impact of funky virus. Thank you, Esquire, for handling that, for reaching out to our our SloopCast medical correspondent, one Mr. Gangland.
Yeah. A lot of reporters seeing multiple people vomiting on the field there, some heading to the locker room, but yeah, it seems like a lot of people, Deontay, Armstrong, Fitzpatrick, Hinsman, McLaughlin, Simmons, maybe more, all got this funky virus of some sort.
It feels like an special attack to the center position.
Maybe. I mean, everybody's around the center, so
that's a valid point. But it got McLaughlin and Hinsman at the same time. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. But later on, I have down way in the notes here. I'll just mention it now. Good news is that they are all pretty much back for the Saturday scrimmage there.
Okay.
So that's good news that they got it out of their system there. But yeah,
sounds like it got it out of their system in more ways than one.
Yes, exactly. Some other things that was pointed out that from some of the reporters here, we've seen it in previous years, but this year is definitely a lot different. Extra protection for the Ohio State players here.
Yeah.
A few years ago, it was an option for some of the players to wear what's called the Guardian caps. You may have seen it's this big, almost like red.
It's soft padding to go on top of the hard pad.
Yeah, so that was a, like I said, it wasn't mandatory in years past, but this year Day's making it mandatory for every player. For this year, he's talked to their medical staff, their doctor, and he gave advice that it's not gonna hurt. It's not gonna hurt adding extra protection for practice, for the scrimmage, for the camp here.
How long till we see this or something like this make its way into the actual game? If we are in fact seeing, a 10% reduction, 20% reduction, if both players are wearing it, how long until we see this or something like this make its way into the actual game?
And more importantly, NFL data shows that having this extra protection results in 50% reduction in concussions during training camps. So yeah, good question.
Well, and I had seen this earlier in the week, and I asked the people in the Discord, and I did some Googling around myself. Why not wear these? And I found a couple answers.
Yeah, I want to hear them.
One is that it is keeping in an extra bit of heat.
Yeah.
So if you're not in a training, and it's keeping the heat right around the head. So in a non-training camp, in a game situation where, I don't got to tell anyone who ever played, even at the high school level, game's just different than practice. As far as the fatigue and just the effort, I don't got to tell anyone, game's just different than practice. Just the level of exhaustion, the level of conditioning, they call it, the player has to get in game condition. That phrase exists for a reason, right? So that's one possible answer. The other thing I wonder about is if it makes it easier for, and I'm not saying purposefully, I'm saying accidentally, for a tackler to grab and, could we be introducing potential neck issues if it's something that can be sort of grabbed onto? It's like, if the entire helmet is covered in a face mask of sorts, something that can be gripped, and I don't know how well it can or can't be gripped, to be honest with you. But I'm asking the question, and maybe there's a good answer. Maybe it's something that needs to be addressed in future iterations of the Guardian cap. Maybe the Guardian cap as we know it right now is a little too big, a little too clunky, a little too insulating to be worn during game days. So I'm not saying, oh my God, why aren't they doing this right now? They should be doing this right now. It's irresponsible not to be doing it right now. That's not what I'm saying. I'm asking, if this is the first generation Guardian cap, what point, second gen, third gen, fourth gen, will this be a thing that people are not just wearing in practice, but during the games as well?
Yeah, it'll be interesting for the next few years. See what comes from it here. All right, moving on to the linebackers. James Laurinaitis took to the stands there, asked a bunch of questions here. So here's kind of the rundown of what was said here. He feels the depth at the will position is pretty fluid, likes what he has there. Says both Styles and Hicks are both physically impressive players. Style brings coverage ability, and Hicks brings the blitz and turns the corner, so to speak, too.
Yeah.
So really good hearing that about the will linebacker. Related
Zach. Sorry, real quick. Zach down in the chat makes a good point. Maybe the helmet will have to be innovated to fit it. So instead of it being something added on to the helmet, it's something that should be integrated into the helmet, which makes a lot of sense to me, knowing nothing. Just saying. Jonathan Taylor wore it today during a preseason game. Yeah. Again, it's something to watch out for. I think it's an interesting innovation that now has some solid numbers behind it. We'll see.
Yep. All right. Staying on the linebackers here, James Laurinaitis talking about power, saying that he seems to have more confidence. Laurinaitis pushing him to make the right calls at that mic position. So he's really working on Powers being the guy, the coordinator, so to speak, on the field there for the defense there. So good to see Laurinaitis spending some time with Powers to try to make him understand what needs to be done and make the right calls there.
Well, sure, because he's playing for time, right? Like I don't think he's gonna supplant Cody Simon this year. I think it's Cody Simon's the mic this year, but injuries happen. But even aside from injuries, does Gabe Powers get in for 10% of the reps, 15% of the reps, 20% of the reps, even though starting isn't, again, aside from an injury, I don't think Gabe Powers is going to steal the starting spot from Cody Simon. But it doesn't mean that there's nothing to work for. Again, it's to what degree are you splitting reps? That's, it's sometimes people get really super caught up on starting versus not starting as if it's a binary thing. When, statistically it is a binary thing. Either you start or you don't. But at the end of the day, there are reps to fight for.
Yep.
20% would be below everyone would. I'm either not reading that right or you did. 20% would be I'm way below. We blow everyone. I'm moving on. One of us are messing up. I don't know which one of us.
All right. Finishing out the linebackers here. Talks
Fair
about
enough,
Pierce
Gangland.
Pierce being a scrapper player, can handle multiple linebacker positions. Stover says he can flat out run. Says the Stover boys are tough.
Mm-hmm.
And then last comment about Hicks, said he spent time with Hicks to just pull the trigger. He just makes things happen.
Spent time to, quote, just pull the trigger. How do you interpret that, Kyle?
I take that as follow your instincts and just go for it, not hesitate.
I agree. Stop, think, more, go.
Yes. Yep. Trust your eyes.
Exactly. A little less thinky, a little more hitty.
Yep. All right. Running backs here. Honestly, I don't think we've talked. I know we've talked some about the running backs past few weeks here, but honestly, like I don't think there's not enough love being talked about with the running backs here.
Right.
So we got to talk about new running back coach Carlos Loughlin here.
Yeah.
See what he says here about the running backs. He starts off talking about he feels very confident with the freshmen Peoples and Williams-Dixon. Feels that they're on a good track right now as true freshmen coming into the program. Talks about Judkins being very gifted, a powerful runner, and is a sponge with a great attitude.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk a little less about the running backs. I don't just mean we as in Kyle and I, but like the Buckeye media sphere that we very distantly orbit.
It's like the best duo running backs in the country. Like it should get a little more talk about.
Here's okay, but Kyle, it's like we always talking about, and Judkins is of course new to the program, but they're both known commodities. Like, I don't think you're not gonna get a lot of clicks.
They're not the shiny freshmen.
Right. The shiny freshmen are going to get because like, who's going to win the position battle? It doesn't matter. They're both going to get a ton of reps. Okay, everyone, it turns out Trey Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are really good. No shit. You know what I mean? It's a little bit more difficult to write stories about known commodities. There was a good story about Henderson who had like a mental lapse in practice back during one of the open practices that all the beat reporters got to go towards, and he apparently ran past he's like, this is what happens when you make a mistake, just sort of goofing with the media. So, it's stuff like that gets mentioned. Again, they're known commodities. We know they're going to be great. That being said, Alex Gleitman, formerly of, you have this quote, Kyle. I don't know if it's exact quote, but said something along, formerly of Buckeye Huddle, now over at Letterman Row, said essentially that Kyle, do you have the exact?
Well, it's Kelly and Chip Kelly and Lachlan were working together to let me find this here. They were working together to, quote, change the running game.
Yeah. But Gleitman, I believe, said something about the offense, about the running game being completely different, completely transformed, a massive improvement over last year. And we talked a bit about.
Yeah. And yeah, he said that noted he consistently heard from people who have watched the practice on how the running game is vastly improved and noticeably different in a good way. And that seems to have been apparent once again during Saturday's scrimmage.
Losing Kevin Wilson, but gaining Chip Kelly. I mean, yeah, there was obviously a year in between the two, which I think is why we saw Day burn out so hard last year.
So how I'm taking this, Jared, how I'm taking this, changing the running game.
Yeah.
Changing the running game.
Yeah.
Wing T.
No. No, I don't think so, Kyle. I think it's just the Chip Kelly influence. I think a lot. I mean, I know you're kidding, but I think a lot of the problems with the offense last year was that, I mean, Kevin Wilson was obviously already gone, but Kevin Wilson was like a very pass heavy offensive coordinator his entire career. You have Ryan Day, a very pass heavy offensive coordinator his entire career, former quarterbacks coach. You have, they brought Brian Kelly in as an Brian Hartline to be a offensive coordinator last year after Kevin Wilson left. And he's a former wide receiver, a very pass-minded guy. They needed someone who was run-minded. And as much as like Chip Kelly is known as like a Chip Kelly is a lot more similar to Urban Meyer in schematically, because they're both very spread them out to run coordinators. That is the type of spread that you see from both Chip Kelly and Urban Meyer. A lot of the times people would associate spread offenses with like air raid offenses, and an air raid is a type of spread.
West Coast.
But it's a type of spread. It's actually very Texas based. The air raid, very Texas based. But return of the power spread is going to hit like crack. And I think that's, I don't know if I'd use it. I mean, hell, I guess maybe power spread might be the correct terminology, but I think that's what we're going to see this year, because we have a pair of quarterbacks who are very good runners. We have Chip Kelly, and we have two really, really good running backs, and we need an offensive line that is good but needs a little bit of help. Yep. The offensive line is good but not great. The offensive line is in a position where it's never going to be like, well, we don't have to outthink them. We can just outwork or outpush them, outmuscle them. And that's not who this offensive line is. The offensive line isn't that good. So you are going to have to outthink them. You are going to have to outplay call them at times, depending upon who you're playing. all of that to say is that Chip Kelly actually brings that expertise to the room where it has not been in a minute.
Yep,
we have a guy who can be a real true run game coordinator in Chip Kelly. It's going to hit right in the early Meyer era nostalgia, but with actual superstars. Yeah.
All right. I think this is good. I think this is good time for a quick break here. So, yeah, we will take a quick break. If you want to avoid these breaks, head on over to the SloopCast.com, where you can, over at Patreon.thesloopcast.com, where you can.
You can also go to the SloopCast.com and find links to all of these things.
You can, yes, to become a patron and to avoid these ads here. So we'll go ahead and take a quick ad break and be right back.
And we're back. What's next up on the docket, Kyle?
Let us talk about the wide receivers. Right from the running backs to the wide receivers, and see what Brian Hartline has to say. And he starts off talking about Ibuka and Howard. Talking about how tremendous confidence that he has between the two. Goes on to talk about how the chemistry seems to be really building there, and is expecting a lot of great things for this fall here. A little bit about Carnell Tate. Says so far here he believes that he can play pretty much anywhere. Never makes the same mistake twice. He's very clean on his mechanics and footwork, and has tough hands as well. Hopefully we see some Carnell Tate sprinkled in this offense this year from everything that I'm reading. Brandon Ennis also talks about Brandon Ennis being a leader among the team, and is actually voted by all his peers, onto the group's leadership council as well too. So a lot of great leadership, it sounds like, from the wide receiver group here, and just it's going to be fun watching this group this season.
I'm gonna take a little piece of this, right? I need to stand over here. Carnell Tate, quote, can play anywhere. Going to go ahead and reiterate what I have been reiterating as people keep talking about, is Emeka Ibuka or Carnell Tate going to be the outside player, and who's going to be the inside slot guy? Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? I think they're both going to play both. I think Jeremiah Smith is very much, he's a freshman, and of course I hear he's like a hard worker and everything. So, I might be underestimating him just because he's a freshman, but maybe Jeremiah Smith can just learn one spot. Get Jeremiah Smith really to just really learn and lock down one spot. But then you have far more seniored players in Tate, Ibuka, and Ennis who will, learn all of the spots. Because as much as, again, you have a new offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly, I don't think you're going to see a massive change in the passing schema or in the vocabulary. The offensive linemen are probably, and the running backs are probably learning a lot of new stuff. And I think it's probably going to be pretty much just the running backs, the wide receivers doing their wide receiver things. I don't have a whole lot of concern there. So
I don't either.
You got Ibuka, you got Tate, you got Ennis, and I think they're going to learn all three spots, or all four spots, or however many. I think they're just going to learn it all. And then Jeremiah Smith can just sort of lock down one of the outside spots. That's how I see this breaking down. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. It gives you a lot of disguisability, and it lets you work with your packages a lot more when maybe Emeka's the slot guy, or maybe Cardinal Tate's the slot guy, or maybe Brandon Ennis is the slot guy. Who's going to be outside? How does, if the cornerback over there, who's he supposed to line up again? You can play with that stuff, especially, like I said, when you have your older guys. We think we can count Tate as he's not a freshman, as a, I once again, I think we all get, and I can include myself in this, a little too caught up about depth chart and who's starting and yada, yada, yada. Ryan Day's been talking since spring that, with the added playoff games, with the extra long season that they have to prepare for, you're going to see much deeper rotation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We don't have to get super hung up on who and who is not starting.
And we mentioned a couple of weeks ago about the rumor that sounded like it's going to happen of changing from 85 scholarship to 105.
Yeah.
As well.
No longer a rumor, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I said, Gangland, but I'll let everyone else enjoy that.
All right, the defensive backs, Jared.
Oh, we got Caleb Downs in the thumbnail today.
We do, yes, but actually not much talk about Caleb Downs, but he's doesn't need a lot to be talked about, because he does great things out there from everything that we've heard.
Is he? Well, how are we feeling about Caleb Downs as a running back rumors, which have been around since the spring?
Well, where was this at here?
Gangland says bullshit.
Actually, I didn't mention this. So Carlos Lachlan did actually talk about that Carlos Downs rumor, and he pretty much deflected that and said, "Yeah, I have no decision if he'll play some running back." So nothing's being talked about.
I never bought
honestly,
in.
He shouldn't. He shouldn't. He really shouldn't.
I mean, there's been
on the defensive side,
as we talked about when we were talking about the running backs. We're getting a lot of positive news, a lot of positive feedback as far as James Peoples and Sam William Dixon are concerned. So, if there were more of a concern at that position, if maybe the freshmen weren't showing up and being really, really good, we might be having a different conversation there. I'm going to forget his name. We did lose the walk-on. Can someone help me out here? The walk-on running back who we lost to a knee injury already. I can't remember his name. A guy who I think we, in many ways, EC Caffey, thank you. Who I think we expected to get not necessarily a ton of carries, but I think I personally expected him to be running back number 3 for the entire season. Obviously not going to happen now. And you already have 2 really good running backs, but what if one of them gets hurt? Again, we're talking about keeping a deep rotation going this season. Anyway, we're not talking about running backs. We're talking about defensive backs. Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah. All right. So Tim Walton talks, talking about his defensive backs, or the BIA, as they like to call themselves here. And I mean, I think so, more so this year than past years here.
They're the best in America this year.
Yeah, he believes that
no one can tell me otherwise.
He believes this group, he has 5 or 6 corners he feels comfortable of playing today. If there was a game today, he feel about 5 or 6 of those fellas.
I totally. We were having that conversation last week at the end of the episode, where I was saying how many teams in the Big Ten would take, Ohio State's second string defense over their starting defense. Calvin Simpson Hunt is not a backup. He is a starter in waiting. Jermaine Matthews Jr. is he's not a backup. He's a starter in waiting. Jordan Hancock, we can talk about how he's a safety in this defense all we want. He's a goddamn cornerback, and we all know it. He's just a nickel corner. Oh no, Jared, he's a Robert. Shut up. He's a corner. Lorenzo Styles is a starter in waiting. That's 6 guys right there, and didn't even touch an incredibly talented group of freshmen. Didn't even talk about Aaron Scott and the other young guys who I think are going to get snaps this year.
Yeah. Well, he did talk about Aaron Scott. He says he's been very competitive, very coachable, and has a lot of energy. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It's a lot of talent in front of Aaron Scott right now, but
right.
I think he'll see some time on the field, especially from what you were mentioning earlier about if Ohio State goes deep into the playoffs here. We'll need more guys to get some more reps.
You have to play all season with the mentality that you're going to go deep into the playoffs. So even if you don't go deep into the playoffs, which by the way is the expectation, just so we're clear, this is a national championship or bust season for Ohio State. Just so we're clear. But it's not if you go deep into the playoffs. You have to prepare in September and October and November that you are going to go deep into the playoffs by rotating your players, more aggressively this year than you have in years past. You have to do that no matter what.
Also talks a little bit about Lorenzo Styles Jr. He says that he's all healthy and good to go. Still has a yellow jersey on, but he's all healthy now. So that's great to hear.
Yellow. Should we be allowing yellow jerseys in the? I know it's not blue. I
need to question that.
Can we do green? Orange.
I thought the quarterbacks typically wore
black.
Quarterbacks wore black.
I don't think we should be using blue or yellow jerseys in the
day. And I know Urban Meyer wouldn't be happy seeing some. I know it's typically blue, like you said, Jared.
Urban
yellow
reserved his smoke for blue, but
yeah. I guess I'll say yes. Yellow is more like caution. Like you see yellow more than like.
Yeah, no, I get it, but orange,
green, and all that. But
you use that high vis orange. What says don't hit this more than the color of a traffic cone?
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, Denzel Burke also. There was a lot of players that also got
guys. You
asked a lot of questions.
This is a football podcast. You can't keep playing the phrasing game on me. It's impossible. Can't do that with Georgia. Yeah, I mean. Yeah,
a lot of the players got asked a lot of questions. I didn't put in the notes here of any of the players, but I did put Denzel Burke here because he's the experience. He's the guy on the defensive back side here. So I did pull a few things from what he had to talk about. He said that he feels that this group of corners and safeties, feel with the group of corners and safeties surrounding him, he feels really comfortable. Communication is really at an all-time high. They all appear to be on the same page, mixing a lot of stuff, and it's going to be a great year.
There we go.
Also says a little bit about Carnell Tate. I know we talked about Tate just a little bit ago. He spoke highly of Tate, saying that he's a really good player. Reminds him a little bit of T. Higgins. Take that for what it's worth. And the last thing here, quarterbacks. Will Howard here. Will Howard mentioned. I only added this in just because it's just funny knowing Coach Mick and the kind of guy he really is. So when Howard came in, he said that he was about 249 when he got here, and now he's around 233, 235. But when he got in, he said that Coach Mick had some choice words with him. got got him to the weight where he should be for his size.
There we go. Esquire in the chat says, allegedly the only corner to pick off Howard, Denzel, has more abdominal muscles than I was aware existed. Completely impossible to throw on this team. Oh, are you saying the only person to pick off Howard is Denzel, and the person with more abdominal muscles than you are aware existed is Igbinosun, I think is what you're saying. Completely impossible to throw on this team. I mean, yeah, and that's not even taking into a factor Jordan Hancock, Caleb Downs, or Lathon Ransom.
Yeah. All right, and some black stripes, Jared. We have 3 black stripes since that came off this week here. Jalen McLean, safety. Defensive end Houston
that's a starter.
Edrick.
That's a starter in waiting right there too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I also think defensive end Houston Edrick as well.
Who I will always want to call Edrick Houston. Just going to plant that flag right now. I'm going to do it. I'm just letting everyone know. I'm going to mess that up.
And
at least we only have
James
one Roger/Rogers at the wide receiver position now, because that was going to ruin me. One of them
and
left.
Brown. Remember the few years we always had Brown at running back or wide receiver
or safety. We had 2 Philly Browns at the same time, and then anyway. Could we average giving up fewer than 100 passing yards per game?
That seems
that's lofty, especially if you get up on teams big and they start throwing the ball frequently. To say 100 passing yards per game feels that's a huge bar. Like could we average giving up fewer than 100 passing yards per game? No. Could we work towards having several games in which you do that? Sure. Hey, Suncard. Starters only stats. I don't know how you quantify that. We'd probably pull our starters before they'd pull their starters. So who is the next right guard? It's a live Ask SloopCast.
And the last black stripe, Jared, is James Peoples,
who we already talked about as a someone who we're feeling very confident will be the third running back on this team, which, again, with Caffey getting hurt, gave him the opportunity, but it sounds like, it's not going to be simply a gifted opportunity, but one he's also going to earn.
So that's the 12th player. That is the 12th player with their black stripes removed. All right, before we go into the scrimmage here, we're going to go ahead and take one more ad break here. Patreon, blah, 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 all that stuff if you don't want to listen. So, we'll be right back.
Love the way we phone it in on the second ad break every time. Doesn't matter if I'm doing it. Doesn't matter if you're doing it. Doesn't matter if we split them up. We always just totally phone in the second ad break.
All right. Let's pull back that curtain here a little bit here from the Saturday scrimmage here, Jared.
Sure.
As we're recording this, it's still.
Can I answer Suncard's question? Here. Suncard asked a lineman question, and I want to answer it.
All right, go ahead.
He asked who's going to be the right guard. Right now, I would bet on Carson Hinsman. I wouldn't say that's a sure thing, but that is who I'd put my money on right now. Can I ask for season predictions for Julian Fleming, please? I've not been following Penn State camp. I don't know what to say there. I think a lot of that will depend upon if the passing game looks better. Just in general.
45 receptions, 850 yards, and 7 touchdowns.
Very specific answer from Kyle. Not sure where you got that. Can Drew Aller throw a deep ball? Will he be allowed to?
Yes.
He's being
I was just about to say, well, the offensive line let him.
Or the coaching staff. I might be biased because he's an Ohio kid who I really like. So I might be biased here. But
I'm still rooting for Fleming as well. Just not the one game. Just not the one game there.
Just not for the one game. I really think Franklin's offense is really hamstringing Aller. Yeah. That's all.
All right, let's get to the Saturday scrimmage. So there's not much published out there related to the scrimmage here. So I'm pulling some stuff from Alex Gleitman that he posted over at On3's website here.
Hold on. Esquire says Aller has the best media PR. Like everyone is convinced that he was hamstrung and isn't just shitty. Yeah. Me included. Why? Because we've seen James Franklin ruin 5-star quarterbacks before. To just keep it 100 with you.
Yeah.
Hackenberg was supposed to be the next guy. 5-star, all everything. He was average at best as a college football quarterback, but thrived with Trace McSorley. Thrived is a relative term. What direction is Aller from? Northeast. If everyone is saying it, okay, and here's the other thing about Aller. Aller's start is sometimes a guy gets anointed a 5-star young, and then everyone just sort of keeps them a 5-star because they were a 5-star, and he came up the charts late through camps, through everything else. Like, I really feel like he earned that 5th star. Anyway, I don't disagree with the assessment. It's just funny that everyone at every level of media fully buys that Franklin is ruining him so completely. There's basically no discussion on the other end, which is rare in the talking head world. Yeah, when the small indies like us and the big powerfuls over at Pick Your Outlet are all lockstep on James Franklin ruins quarterbacks, it's probably for a reason.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get over to what Alex posted here. So, in regards to the quarterback, from what's been reported, to no surprise, Howard continues to look like the guy.
Define that for me.
Could see as soon as Thursday that they may name a starter for the quarterback as soon as Thursday.
And it's Howard.
Yeah. For the running back, I mentioned this already. Kelly and Lachlan working to changing the running game. Running game is vastly improved and noticeably different in a good way. Mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
When we talked about
that has been covered.
Wide receivers.
Oh, like a backpack rapper. I have heard the term backpack rapper before. Does that simply mean independent? I thought there was a different connotation to that, but also I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Bryson Rogers had a really good scrimmage here. Had a touchdown during the scrimmage. Jeremiah Smith, to no one's surprise, had a good day. Surprised to hear how good he was, though, at blocking on the edge. Not only catching the ball, but being able to block as well. Ennis and Ballard also getting good praises from coaches as well during the scrimmage.
I mean, Ballard
praises all around.
Rogers and Ballard were two guys who were challenged to step things up by Ryan Day publicly, which we don't see Day publicly call out guys too often. And by the way, I predicted on last week's show that David Adolph would probably be getting a scholarship, and he has gotten a scholarship. Thank you very much. Are you not entertained?
Okay.
If the definition of backpack means independent, underground, and gritty, yes, I will accept that definition. Esquire, we don't got to make the obvious jokes. We can be better than that.
Mentioned that the offensive line appears to all be back for the scrimmage here, to all gone away with the funky virus. Right guard is still really competitive for the notes.
Yeah. I don't doubt that for a moment, but that's, Sun Card asked, I said, best guess Carson Hinsmith. That's who I am putting my money on, but it's not like I feel I will stand here and confidently say Josh Simmons, Donovan Jackson, Seth McLaughlin, Josh Fryer. I'll just, whatever tiny bit of reputation I have, I'll stake on those being the starters at those positions. I'm just not nearly as confident about right guard. If I had to put money on it, it's Hinsman, but I wouldn't put money on it, for the record.
And then the defensive backs here, all the groups have that they're the consensus best unit on the team, and there really is no debate about it. Thoughts on that? No debate that the defensive backs are the best unit on the team.
I agree. For doing defensive backs as a whole, yeah. I mean, again, I think there is a definitive top 4 wide receivers. We talked about that a lot on our last episode. It's Smith, Ennis, no particular order, obviously, Emeka, and Tate. Those are your top 4 guys, period. Okay, and we can have a lot of conversation about who the 5th guys are. But as far as the defensive back group is concerned, again, the 2 deep, 10 defensive backs. The 2 deep at defensive back is insane.
What about the 1A and 1B of the running backs, though?
I mean, but right after that, you go straight to true freshmen.
Yeah.
Like,
all right, and the last notes here, and then we can talk about whatever else we want to here, Jared.
Well, we have some Ask SloopCasts.
And there are some Ask SloopCast questions as well. Some chippiness among players, teammates, and coaches, but they were all healthy competitiveness.
Yes.
Chippiness. Mentions here, the last quote here is, this team has a different fire to it versus past teams that Ryan has had here. I can't fully describe it. It's just different in the attitude the team brings every single day.
I mean, elephant in the room. This team doesn't want to lose to Michigan again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's straight up what it is. And Kyle and I are very firmly on the record, and have been since February, that Michigan's going to suck this year. Even without NCAA rules infraction, even if none of that affects this season, which it could, for the record, it could affect this season. But even if the NCAA says nothing through the calendar year 2024, we already got punishments for Harbaugh. Harbaugh's not on the team anymore, whatever. But even if the NCAA doesn't hand down any more punishments, specifically like until the calendar year 2025, which again, they might, but even if they don't, this Michigan team's going to suck. Period. They're not going to be that good.
No one on this Buckeye team, no one, Jared. No one on this team has beaten Michigan from player standpoint.
That can't be right.
At least from what I'm looking at, from scholarship players, none of them. None.
Hold on. I thought there was at least one.
There's nobody from the 2019. There's no super seniors on here.
That's
no scholarship players have beat Michigan. There might be a walk-on or two, but
it does not. I thought Cody Simon was 2019, but I am incorrect.
He's
2020.
Mm-hmm. You can fact check me on here.
I know. I
feel pretty confident.
I have. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it needs to be stated we didn't play Michigan in 2020 because they backed out.
Yes. Correct.
That needs to be said out loud.
Yeah. So since we're talking about Michigan here and all my notes before we get into the questions here, I do love Buckeye Twitter this Sunday here, Jared.
I don't go on
Twitter. A lot of Buckeye Twitter is pulling up receipts from 2011 and 2012, where all of the...
Turns out sports fans are hypocrites.
Michigan media, Michigan fans were calling on Tressel and him being a cheater and this and that. And yeah, Buckeye fans kept receipts and has been pulling them up this weekend.
270 in the air, 180 on the ground. Gives you 450 total offense. I'm good with that. I don't think that's going to be the average. I would say against good competition. I think again, I've been saying this is going to look more like an Urban Meyer team than a Ryan Day team. I've said that several times this offseason so far. So I'm going to go back on an urbanism and say 200 and 200. That's what Urban said was his goals, 200 and 200. And I feel like Tom's 220 going to hit a lot, I think. Yeah, I feel a lot better about 220 or 200, obviously, easier, than I do about 270. I don't feel like we're going to throw the ball all that much this year, especially against higher level competition. I feel like this is going to be a team that runs first and second, and then will fuck you up with our wide receivers when the moment you stop paying attention. Earmuffs. Now we're 53 minutes in. I'm going to curse. I try not to curse during like the first 10 minutes because YouTube. After I get past that, it's all fair game, man. It's all fair game after that.
All right. Question time. Time for some SloopCast questions. Please. Here. We got about 6 minutes here. So, all right. First question we have here is camp proving that even with their weaknesses, the core strength, specifically on defense and in the skill positions, will be able to mask our weaknesses.
Is camp proving that even with their weaknesses, the core strength, especially on defense and in these skill positions, will be able to mask our weaknesses? So our weaknesses as they stand right now, I would say, are the offensive line and maybe the quarterbacks. You're hearing a lot of good things about Will Howard, and I don't think he's going to be a weakness. I think he's going to be a good college football quarterback, but he's also not going to be CJ Stroud. or Justin Fields or Dwayne Haskins. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We're looking more like JT Barrett here. Is going to be a closer comp to what we have gotten used to under Ryan Day. Again, this is going to be a very urban football team. By which I mean Urban Meyer, not urban as a code for something else. It's going to be a very Urban Meyer football team. I don't think the offensive line is going to be our strength this year, especially if there are injuries, because we don't, especially at the tackle position. I feel like we have some depth at the interior offensive line. I'm not confident about our depth at tackle. I'm not even fully confident about one of our starters at tackle, if I'm being real with you. But as we talked about earlier in the episode, I think Chip Kelly is a lot better at designing a run game to work towards the offensive line's strengths. So more so than the skill positions covering up for weaknesses in the offensive line, I think it's going to be coaching that better masks those weaknesses along the offensive line.
All right. Another question. Predict which player or players the beat will be discussing this week after hearing reports he really showed out at the scrimmage.
Beat will be hearing early reports really showed out at the scrimmage. I mean, we've heard some of these reports already. So it feels cheating to say it at this point. But I don't know. I mean, we've heard some things about the wide receivers, about Rodgers doing well in the scrimmages. We're hearing a lot of positives about James Peoples showing out at scrimmages. I feel like we've already heard those reports, so it's difficult to answer that honestly.
My person would be Bryson Rodgers.
Yeah. Sun Card in the chat. Will the defense be rotational or ride 13 guys out? Rotational. Ryan Day has been very vocal about making sure this team is ready for an extended season with multiple playoff games now on, more than 2 playoff games now on the table with, Oregon and Washington and USC being in the conference now, with the general level of competition being higher from week in and week out, that he needs to make sure that people stay healthy and stay energized, and that he will be rotating more deeply this year. And quite frankly, they have the guys for it. Again, the second string defensive lineup for Ohio State could start at many, many, many programs. Wholesale, all 11 of them, better than many, and I'm not talking about MAC teams, I am talking about Power 4 teams would trade their entire starting defensive 11 for Ohio State's second string defensive 11. And I say that